Nicole Lang, and I'm the iglide Product Manager for igus Incorporated. igus Incorporated includes Canada, Mexico, and the United States, so basically all of North America. And I've been with igus for 22 years, 13 of those as a product manager. If you have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the chat feature of the Teams function. You can see it kind of if you hover over the screen, you'll see a little show conversation and you can put it in there. And at the end of the webinar, we'll be happy to answer any questions that come up. Okay, so first I know that you're here for a webinar on how to calculate the lifetime of iglide bearings, but I do want to go over just a little bit about igus and about what makes iglide unique. So we'll talk about that now briefly. igus is a German company. We were founded in 1964 in Cologne, Germany. We currently have locations in over 35 different countries with over 3,000 employees worldwide. So this means that we can do all types of global support, and our German facility is where our engineering, our lab, injection molding, all of that is done, as well as material development. So when we were founded, it was with the idea that we are a plastics engineering company developing materials for use in applications with motion, any type of motion. So typically in this context, we're going to speak primarily about bearings, but we also offer linear guides and cable carrier systems as well. Our North American facility is located in East Providence, Rhode Island, and our North American location was founded in 1985. Our headquarters are in East Providence, Rhode Island, and currently the size of that building is 225,000 square feet. We have complete inventory of over 28,000 different igus components, including over 20 million bearings in stock. What I really want to point out here, though, is that we do have over 430 employees in North America, including 120 direct igus sales employees. Those sales employees are technically trained direct igus employees, like I mentioned earlier, who can come out and do visits with you once we're kind of at that point. So I hope everybody's staying safe. We also are offering virtual visits now as well. Just really quickly, a little bit about the materials themselves, because this does come into play when we start talking about our lifetime calculation tool. It's really important to have an understanding of what our polymers are made of and what makes them unique. So all iglide materials are base polymers with reinforcing compounds and/or fibers and dry lubricants that are homogeneously blended. So they can be used as a wear surface over the complete bearing. So what makes this bearing material unique is not only its plastic nature or material, but also that the entire wall thickness of the bearing can be used as a wear surface. So if you see the picture down below with the bearing and you see this gray section here is meant to represent a shaft. So quite a few bearing manufacturers will recommend that you use a polished or smooth shaft. At igus, we actually prefer a little bit of a roughness. And that means as the bearing is moving over the shaft itself or the pin, whether it be oscillating, rotating, or linear operation, the dry lubricants embed themselves in the valley of that shaft, creating what we call an optimized gliding surface. And what that also means is that we maintain a constant coefficient of friction after an initial startup phase. We have quite a few dry tech products that are based on this principle. So all of the technology that I just showed you is present in all of these products, including the ones where you see some metal. So there are definitely metal components that we offer, including our linear guides. But the plastic sliding elements are what make our products unique. And all of these dry tech products come with a lifetime calculation tool, which I'll show you a little bit later. Today, we're going to focus again on the iglide plain bearings calculation tool. Tomorrow, my colleague Matt Mowry will be presenting on how to use our linear online calculation tools. Just one more little tidbit of information before we start getting into the expert system itself or the lifetime configuration. Our test lab is located in our German facility, and there we've been testing tribal polymers since 1985. So it's a large test lab. In that test lab, we develop over 300 new materials annually, and a lot of those are developed based on feedback from customers or prospective customers who have certain requirements or needs, whether it be a certain certification, a certain requirement for a chemical resistance, all those types of things we take into account, and we create and develop new materials based on that. So we do over 11,000 tests per year on over 50 machines. We also do customer specific tests when requested. And what's really important, and the reason I wanted to point this out, is the empirical data from the test lab and what we actually do testing is the basis for all online tools at igus. So the tests that we do directly translate into the online tool that we're going to go over now. I think that's really important because I think in a lot of cases, the lifetime calculation is based on just some numbers or some formulas that were developed. And in this case, it's truly done on testing. So there's a couple ways to get to the service life calculation tool on our website. But first, if you start on igus.com, you see that there's a tab that says configurators, and I'm going to walk you through this in a minute. You go to bearing technology and then click on the iglide service life calculation tool. So now we'll actually get into that tool. So if you remember, I just pointed out, you see right under the igus logo, if you go to configurators here, and then you want to hover over the bearing technology tab. And of course, I'm getting a request for live chat, which we also have available. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and somebody can get back to you via our live chat function as well. So if you scroll over the bearing technology, and you go to the second one down, which is igus service life calculation. This one will give you the lifetime in hours. The material selector will allow you to eliminate certain materials based on feedback that you may or may not get, or certain application parameters. But the iglide service life calculation tool will actually walk you through and give you a lifetime in hours for your application. So there's a couple ways to go about this. First, you have units of measure and metric or imperial. We'll leave it imperial for now. Here, you're able to put in your measurements. So shaft diameter, let's say we use a 1/2 inch bearing. Bearing width would be a 1/2 inch. You could do it this way. Something else that you could do if you wanted to, if you had the igus article number, you could type that in. So if you know what part you've used in the past, you can type this in. This would be a 3/4 inch bearing length. So if I were to put this part number in, this will change the bearing width here. So you can see how that just changed to 3/4, excuse me. And the outer diameter for this one, given that it's a size 0810, is 5/8. So it automatically input that information and corrected that for us. At this point, you're going to go ahead and you're going to put in the load on the bearing, and this is the load over each individual bearing. So if you have 4 bearings and the complete load is 200 pounds, then you would say 50 pounds per bearing. Then you have the option to change the temperature. So we have ambient temperature, so the temperature that the bearing is seeing really at all times here. The brief maximum temperature, which is about a 20-minute time period, as well as a minimum temperature. If ambient sounds about right, and typically it's going to see about 68 degrees Fahrenheit, you can leave that in here. If you think it's going to be closer to 100 degrees, feel free to make that change. You can see we still have 53 suitable materials. So right up here, you can sort of follow along and you can see when this material number may or may not drop, depending on what types of information you're inputting into the expert system. So if you click on this little magnifying glass, it's going to show you that pretty much everything is still available to you, given the information that we put in. If we make a change here and we say that the brief maximum temperature will be 250 degrees, I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. You're going to see that this number will change now to 41 suitable materials. When we click here, we see for our standard products, for example, iglide J is no longer coming up as an option, and that's because we put in a brief maximum temperature of 250 degrees. You can also see quite a few of our specialists will get knocked out as well, but you're still left with 41 different materials. I'm going to go ahead and change that back. I do want to go back here for 1 second. So under the design and load, there is a option. Okay, we'll do the speed first and then we'll go back to that. So under motion type, you have quite a few different options here. This tool is primarily used for rotating and oscillating or pivoting motions. You can, however, put in linear, but typically we use our linear guide expert systems and calculation tools for that. So if we were to use an oscillating motion here, we would select pivoting. What's really important here is the pivot angle. So this is the beta pivot angle. If you're starting in the middle and you go 30 degrees one way, come back to the middle and 30 degrees the other way, here you would put in 30 degrees, not 60. So very important that you're putting that calculation here. And then if you select how many times per minute, so let's say we do 10 times per minute, it's going to automatically calculate for you the amount of feet per minute that the bearing is traveling. And if you remember, we put in the load on the previous tab. What's really important here is that for all of our bearings, PV value is a very important factor. So considering the speed in addition to the load is key here. So the higher your speed, the lower your load needs to be. The lower the load, the higher your speed can be, and vice versa. One other additional point that I want to make on this slide is intermittent operation is really important here. So you can, if you know that the bearing is going to be operational for, let's say, 60 seconds, so on for 60 seconds and off for 120. So if it's on for 1 minute, down for 2 minutes, you can put that in here, and that will change the results because then the bearing has time to cool down. And there's quite a few things that come into play there with not only the lifetime, but also with the PV value. There's also an option for pure motion time per hour, so you can change that as well if you want, but using the duty cycle is a great way to go ahead and do that. So here you have the option to select your shaft material. Sometimes we get asked questions about different shaft materials that are not available on the calculation tool. And what I would say there is that it's probably most important to find something with a similar conductivity that's here. If you have a shaft material that's not listed and there's no thermal conductivity that's similar, then I would say to reach out to me or to any of your outside salespeople if you've met with them before, and they'll be happy to sort of walk you through the process and figure out what makes the most sense to include or to list here. Also, we have a lot of data from those tests that I mentioned earlier. So it could be something that we have some feedback or some information on that we'd be happy to provide for you. So in this case, if we select stainless steel 304, you can see we still have the same number of suitable materials. And the more complicated you make your application, the more difficult it seems to be based on load and speed, then the amount of bearing materials and suitable materials will certainly change. So here we have stainless steel. For our housing material, we're going to go ahead and leave that as steel. I do want to point out, though, that in our catalog, we do call out ID after press fit dimensions. Those ID after press fit dimensions are based on pressing the bearing into a steel housing bore. So a lot of times we do have customers who will say that they have an aluminum housing bore or a different type of metal, and usually that's okay. We might ask you what the wall thickness is of that housing bore because we want to make sure that the bearing has enough compression on it to get to that ID after press fit. The softer the material of the housing, the more challenging that may or may not become. So that's why we might ask you a question about that. For example, plastic housings can definitely have an impact. A lot of times it's difficult to imagine, but the iglide material may be stronger than the housing, even some metals, including aluminum. And so it might actually push out that housing bore rather than compressing down. So just something to consider as you're going through your application. Here you see the wear limit. So we have maximum radial clearance. This is really important because I want to point out to you that when we give you a lifetime in hours, what we're saying is that at the point of that number of hours that we give you, when we get to the results page, this is the amount of radial clearance or the amount of wear that the bearing will see, the increase in radial clearance between the bearing and the shaft. So it does not mean that there'll be catastrophic failure. So if we get an application and we have a lifetime in hours of 600 hours, at 600 hours, it simply means that you'll have this amount of wear between the bearing and the shaft in addition to the original radial clearance that was allowed. Some people need something different. So there are a couple other options here. So you can allow for less wear on the bearing or you can allow for more wear on the bearing. This option is up to you. So please note that you can make that change here depending on your application. So now we're at the results page. Really important here is that you have the option. You see we have 53 suitable materials, 8 of these in the desired dimension. So what I want to do here, or what you might want to do here, is show the materials that are actually allowed in that desired dimension. So now we've kind of narrowed it down. We've made it smaller. And you can see here a price. So this price is for 50 to 249 pieces. Something else I really want to point out, we are very liberal with our sample policy. And really, if you're designing something and you're working on a new project and you need to do some testing, please reach out to us to send you samples. In addition to that, if your quantities are higher than this or lower than this, please reach out to us for pricing. That's not a problem. Our website does go up to 499 pieces, but we're happy to discuss further with you in terms of quoting. So now if I see different materials here and I see that our iglide Z material gives us 214,000 hours of lifetime, but you only need 1,000, then certainly there's no reason for you to pay $5.29 when you could be paying $1.13 or whatever the case may be. So note that the service life in hours, obviously, sometimes you're going to get something that has a very high service life. That's great, but may or may not be what you need. So please explore all options in terms of that. If you make a selection on a particular material, what you're going to note here is a potential increase in lifetime based on the shaft material that you selected. So if you're not set in stone and you don't have a specific shaft material that's required or necessary, then it is possible to select a different option. So here, if we select iglide J works very well on hard anodized aluminum. If I were to make this choice here, you can see that we actually offer this as well. Then you can refresh this and it's going to repeat the service life calculation tool for the material selected. So you can see the increase in hours on iglide J just by switching the shaft material. So of course that's optional, and that depends really on how far along in the design process you are and how much flexibility you have with shaft materials. For some people, they're pretty set in stone and they need a specific shaft, and that's completely fine. So it's up to you, but just know that that exists there. I think a lot of people aren't familiar with that section. So now let's say that we want to compare a couple of them and we want to develop a report. So if we select our iglide J, and even if we just pick the top 3, we have a couple different actions here. The first one is we can create a selection report. And if I open it here, you're going to see what you input into the expert system itself or the lifetime calculation tool. Expert system can be a little tricky because sometimes people aren't really familiar with what an expert system is. So lifetime calculation tool sometimes makes a little more sense. So you can go back here and you can look and see what we put in. You see the lifetime in hours, and then you're going to get a comparison for the materials. And this is all the technical information that you need depending on the application itself, what you put in and what's important for you. If something is not suitable, it would also tell you why it's not suitable and what the max limitations are for that particular material. Another option here is that you can go directly to our CAD file section. All of our CAD files are available online and are free of charge for you. So please utilize our download center for CAD models. Please know that you can go directly to the CAD model for this particular part from the expert system. You can download it in a variety of formats, so step files, DWG files. There's a lot of different options for you here. You can also get a PDF sheet or a 2D model, and you can directly insert it into a CAD system. So it will also give you the dimensions here. Another option here is to request a sample. So if you were to select this option here, then you can put your information in and we will get a notification that you're requesting a sample for your application. So you don't have to start from the beginning. You don't have to put in a new request to igus. It will come directly to us that way. And the final option is to basically order or request. So if the part has pricing, you are able to order it directly from our website. So here, let's say that you wanted to get 100 pieces, you can update the prices. It's going to show you the unit price, the total price, and then you can move directly through our shopping cart. Since we did select hard anodized aluminum as the option in order to increase the lifetime in the case of iglide J, it's not the case for all igus materials. And you would select, if you were interested in our shafting, you could get that from here as well. What's interesting too is you get the availability directly from here. So you see the J bearing itself is in stock, it's ready to ship, and we can ship that very quickly. I do want to go back a little bit to the beginning. I want to point out to you, and something that I forgot to mention, here we do have a further environmental parameters slide. What's interesting about this is for sure you can put this information in dirt exposure, underwater use. When you start getting into this, please also feel free to contact one of us. We're happy to walk through these applications with you. So this is a great guide for you. It's a great way to calculate lifetime of your bearing, but we also have a lot of experiences that we can share with you. What's great here though is that there is the option for chemicals, and this will reduce based on the amount of bearing materials that are available to you if you select a certain chemical here. So if you do have chemical exposure, you can select that here. Or if you need FDA compliance requirements, then you would hit OK here. And now you see we're down to 5 suitable materials. All of these are FDA compliant. So please make use of the further environmental parameters if necessary, or if you need to. This will take out anything that doesn't really apply here. But again, we are happy to review all applications with you. So while this is a great tool, while it's a great way to calculate the lifetime of your bearing material, again, I just want to point out to everybody that we are happy to review the application as well. And I think what's really important is each application is different and unique. And so it's really important that you have the opportunity to test those bearings. So I do also recommend that you reach out to us to get free samples for your application. We offer a lot of different bearings for a lot of different types of applications. And I think the fact that our bearings are self-lubricating and maintenance-free make them unique and desirable in certain applications, whether it be a dirty environment like a bike pedal or a piece of ag equipment like you see here, or something where cleanliness and elimination of contamination is important or necessary, like in medical equipment or packaging equipment. So there are a lot of different reasons why people would want a self-lubricating bearing, whether it be to avoid dirt sticking to an external lubricant, to avoid contamination. But we operate in all of these different industries and all of these different environments quite successfully. So please feel free to reach out to us for any application examples or any knowledge that we might have about specific applications. As I mentioned earlier, iglide bearings are not the only igus products that offer online calculation tools. So really every product that we have, from our cable carrier to our cables, to our bearings, to our linear guides, all offer some calculation tool or configurator online, and all of that's available directly on our website. Just some information about some of the product managers at igus Inc. So we are all located in our Rhode Island office. So myself, we just spoke, but obviously Matt Mowry will be doing, like I said, similar to what I just did for the linear guide systems tomorrow, as well as we have Dan Thompson, who's our eChain systems product manager, and Don Nestor, who's our ChainFlex product manager. So you can reach out to any of us on igus.com or the number listed below, or via our email. And one thing I do want to mention at the end of this, we do have a virtual tour available. So right now we're doing everything we can to present information to our customers or prospective customers virtually, since we're not really visiting people, and since that's we're obviously in a different climate and a different time. So we do have on our website a virtual tour for our news. So Hanover, our largest trade show in Germany, is not currently happening because Hanover was canceled, but we took Hanover to our Cologne facility and created our virtual tour of our news that way. So I want to thank all of you for joining. I am going to open it up now for questions.